After 2 weeks of testimony, the case was in the hands of the jury. Justine's family fretted.
Oh, I felt so nervous. It only takes one person on a jury to not be sure. And that seemed pretty likely, that just one person would say, I'm not totally convinced, guys. I'm not going to vote with you.
They waited for the verdict.
You see movies, and everything happens like this in the movies, and it's just not the way it is.
And whenever they could, they visited the makeshift roadside memorial where Justine had died.
It's hard. In a way, it's a really peaceful place for me, and in the other way, it's a really, really sad place, to think that, this was her last place on earth.
But as they each acknowledged, nothing had ever been the same since getting that call in the middle of the night that Justine was dead.
What was the impact of it to your family?
It's like the Big Bang. We sort of exploded and went in different directions.
Grief consumed them. The Swartz's marriage of 3 decades fell apart.
Eventually our marriage crumbled. It goes on and on. It's endless.
An unstoppable shockwave.
There's this giant hole. But nothing will ever fill that.
The prosecutors hoped the trial would bring the family some measure of peace. But from years of experience, they knew that even a guilty verdict would only do so much.
There's collateral damage everywhere.
Absolutely, and we can't avoid that. And it's not a pleasant thing, but it's a fact of the world we live in.
The trial had been an uphill fight. The prosecutors hadn't been able to tell the jury precisely how or even where Justine had been killed.
You'd like to be able to explain exactly what happened, step by step.
But these jurors would be the people to say guilty or not. And they were having a hard time figuring out how one man could pull off such an elaborate murder plot. Eric, they figured, would have likely had to run over her with some large vehicle, found a way to move her body to the road, and then gotten both Justine's Mustang and his motorcycle to the crime scene, all in a short window of time.
I spent a lot of nights laying there trying to put it together.
There are a lot of moving parts here.
There were.
And the jurors didn't see the parade float maker as the solution to Eric's problem of moving all those vehicles around.
Could that happen? Possible. Anything can happen. How likely? 1 in a million chance would be my guess.
We didn't really weigh that in on our decision. Yeah, we kind of put that towards the back.
So it was not a decider, you're saying, huh?
No.
But they also weren't persuaded by the testimony of Eric's cousin Tracy, who said she was with him around 11:30 the night Justine died as he cared for his mother.
She could have been confused on the dates, and but mother was in and out of the hospital a lot.
They returned to the courtroom to ask the judge to define circumstantial evidence.
He said use our common sense and take in all the evidence and make our decision that way.
So many unanswered questions, from the complexities of an elaborate plot to the mysteries of the human heart.
How someone could do that to someone they claimed that they loved so much.
They struggled to reach a decision.
We had a timeline up on the board so that we could kind of look at what happened, who said what, to try to figure out what was what we could believe and what we couldn't believe.
Finally, they decided to take a vote. They were unanimous.
We were kind of stunned for a minute.
Word went out. The jury had a verdict.
Stephen! They have a verdict! Oh, gotta go. I felt like I was just gonna explode. It's about as tense as I've ever been in my life.
The family had been waiting almost 5 years to the day for this moment. A moment they thought might never come.
I remember having my hand on Stephen's forearm, and I felt the little muscle pulsing, and I just kept saying, it's going to be okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
The jurors walked back into the courtroom. They announced their verdict. Eric Abshire, guilty of murder in the first degree, sentenced to life in prison.
It's this huge feeling of release.
As Steve and Heidi Swartz walked out of the courthouse, they hugged. The long ordeal, the 5-year pursuit of justice for their daughter, finally had ended with the guilty verdict.
It was a lot of work, but it's worth it.
And the prosecutors knew without the family and the dedicated investigators, Eric Abshire would likely have never even been charged.
I think Eric almost got away with murder. It would have been just easier to say, oh, what a tragedy. A young groom has lost his beautiful bride. What a shame. We're so sorry.
In the end, the jurors acknowledged the case did have unanswered questions, but they nonetheless felt confident with their verdict.
We don't have to know exactly how it happened. We just know from the circumstantial evidence that he was the one that did it.
Abshire is appealing the jury's verdict, and his cousin Tracy believes the jury got it wrong, that Eric did not kill Justine.
I don't believe he could do something like that.
You've read the articles, they're out there, everybody can read them. It's pretty easy to put together a picture of Eric as a monster, huh?
It is easy.
Guy
to
goes
do
around
that.
looking for
Right.
barroom fights, women get restraining orders, runs up a lot of debt. I mean, it's very easy to put together a bad picture of Eric. What do you think's incomplete here?
It doesn't make him a murderer. A lot of men are like that. I mean, I hadn't seen that side of him act that way towards her, but a lot of men make mistakes, act certain ways, but it doesn't make them murderers.
For Justine's family and friends, one of the greater unsolved mysteries has always been why she stayed in the relationship with Eric. They speculate that she was planning to leave him the night she was killed. After the funeral, they discovered her luggage was missing. She'd also left behind 2 months of lesson plans in her drawer at school.
I think she realized that if she stayed, something terrible was going to happen to her.
And you think she did try to get out,
I think that that's what she was doing,
but didn't make it?
but didn't make it.
But all of Justine's friends and family are tough on themselves for not intervening even more forcefully in what to them had become a miserable marriage.
It's the guilt club. We're all in the guilt club. Her parents, everybody. And that's the hardest thing for me. I mean, I could have just flown out there because in my heart I felt that it was wrong. So, you know, sometimes you say you can't borrow trouble, but I guess after years of it you have to put your foot down and do something.
Lauren likens the long-term domestic abuse she believes her sister suffered to watching her slowly die from a chronic illness. Even with the guilty verdict in, the agony hasn't faded.
Peace and justice seem like these lofty ideals, and they're going to be, you know, blue skies and sunshine, but that's not the case.
At the elementary school where Justine taught, they've planted a tree in memory of the kindergarten teacher whose happiest moments in her final year were likely spent in the company of the children she loved.